think Grassy just likes to make work for me. I'll set the new code to 45100.
System Shock 2 is the latest classic to get the remaster treatment by Nightdive Studios, which is notable as the company's origins are intertwined with the legendary sequel. Back in the before times of 2012, one Stephen Kick, disappointed he couldn't find a copy of System Shock 2 to play on digital storefronts, went through the trouble of tracking down the company that owned the System Shock IP and reached a deal with them to not only patch the game, making it compatible on modern machines, but also re-release it on PC digital storefronts, founding Nightdive Studios in the process to facilitate. And wouldn't you know it, this re-release was quite profitable, and before Stephen Kick, a business model emerged. Thus, through the next decade and change, Nightdive would make a name for itself re-releasing and remastering classic PC and console titles, majority of which were accomplished by their in-house Kex engine. Their success eventually led them to buy the System Shock IP outright, giving them full control over the first two games. But sadly not three, which is a whole other can of worms I'm not getting into. Hey Tencent, any news on that? This acquisition led Nightdive to not only remaster the first game, but also give it a ground-up remake, which turned out pretty dang good, despite a rocky development. My videos for those linked in my description and on the end screen. Suffice it to say, Nightdive has gone to great lengths to revive this IP. Now, 13 years after Nightdive was founded specifically to re-release System Shock 2, the company has finally given it a full Kex engine remaster. And so, in today's video, I will be lending my thoughts on System Shock 2, the game, and delve into the remaster work Nightdive has done. All to help you decide if Shodan is still worth the trouble 25 years later. But before all that, I want to give Nightdive Studios a big thank you for providing the review code. And with that, let's grab a wrench, munch on some worms, and give our systems a shock. System Shock 2 was originally released back in 1999 and developed by Irrational Games, alongside Looking Glass, who developed the original. While it sadly was a commercial failure at the time of its release, it received immense critical acclaim, and in subsequent years was hailed as not only one of the greatest games of all time, but also one of the most influential for both the immersive sim genre, of which it belongs, and first-person gaming on the whole. If you're not familiar with System Shock 2, you're likely familiar with its spiritual successor, BioShock, which was also developed by Irrational Games, iterating on System Shock 2's systems and gameplay loop while also recycling many of its plot points. Describing System Shock 2 as BioShock in space or BioShock as System Shock at the bottom of the ocean is pretty apt, and all of them are basically Ultima Underworld, although that's a history lesson for another time. Taking place in the year 2114, 42 years after the events of the first game, you play as a soldier who awakens from cryosleep upon the starship Von Braun, where something has gone very wrong. The ship has been taken over by violent human-alien hybrids who have killed most of the crew and converted them into monsters. And with the help of a fellow survivor, it is up to you to stop this alien infestation. System Shock 2 sticks very close to the gameplay of its predecessor. The player once again has to navigate a maze-like multi-floor spacefaring vessel, solving a series of ever-escalating and compounding problems. Like, you have to get to Deck 4, but the elevator is shut down, so you have to power it up. But you need a key code to access maintenance, and the man that has the code is in the medical bay, which needs a key card to access. Oh god! Yeah, this game is nothing but curveballs and setbacks, and standing in your way is an army of aliens, robots, security measures, AIs, and the stupid assassins. It's basically up to the player to decide how to solve these problems using their wits and the tools granted to them. Combat will be a common go-to as they have a decent arsenal ranging from a standard pistol to a grenade launcher and more exotic implements. But then there's also hacking, allowing them to shut down security systems, bypass keypads, and of course turn turrets against enemies.
Spreading our message and our flesh.
Wahahaha! The new tools in the toolbox are the psi powers, which are essentially magic abilities, but since this is science fiction, they're psychic abilities. For those that have played BioShock, they're analogous to plasmids. There's a broad range of psi powers to choose from, offensive ones for the killin', defensive ones that can heal you or protect you from hazards, ones that can manipulate the ship's systems from afar, and ones that lend conveniences to exploration and looting. Nice. And the more powerful psi powers you gain, the more flexibility you have to solve problems.
Good. You've managed to get out before the whole area depressurized. I've just uploaded you some cybernetic modules. You can use
The real innovative addition is the RPG system. Completing tasks earns the player cyber modules that can be spent at terminals to improve their base stats, as well as improve their combat, hacking, and psionic abilities. In fact, the beginning of the game has you go through a training course that essentially serves to build out your starting stats. And naturally, your choice in what to spend your cyber modules on dictates which abilities you are able to use throughout your playthrough, what you are able to do in the game. This lends System Shock 2 a ton of replay value as players can focus on different builds that lend them different options and solutions. Shock 2 is not the deepest of immersive sims, but the player does have a decent amount of choice and wiggle room to play their way. If they want to slaughter everything like the Doomslayer, they can. If they want to hack everything and turn the Von Braun into a death trap, they can. If they want to be sneaky and use psionics to kill and manipulate from afar, they can. If they want to do a little bit of everything, they can. So how does System Shock 2 play? Well, compared to the first game, a hell of a lot better. The original Shock had a cumbersome control scheme that lent a lot of options and control, but brought with it a steep learning curve. It was like trying to simultaneously drive a tank and navigate an early 90s operating system. Shock 2, however, embraced the more straightforward first-person shooter controls and mechanics of the day, making it far more playable and easy to jump into, while still retaining the depth of the original. I cannot stress how huge of an improvement it is. The playability is night and day. The first game's operating system qualities can still be found here, chiefly with the Interact mode, where the inventory and other info boxes pop up and the player can interact with the environment with their mouse, adventure game style. Admittedly, this does take some getting used to, especially for newer players, but once you get the hang of it, you'll find the game has a constant, rapid, and fun flow. Also compared to the first game, it has a more refined structure and is better paced. The original game kinda threw you off the deep end, leading to a lot of deaths and trial and error while trying to get the hang of the systems and navigating the maze of a space station. It's overwhelming for a first-time player. Whereas the first 3 to 4 hours of Shock 2 are actually pretty focused and somewhat linear, gradually training the player on all aspects of the game, subtly and unsubtly. It can feel a hair slow in the beginning, but after the player gets through it, the game opens up much like the first game. Most of the ship becomes explorable, and the player has a laundry list of tasks to complete in whatever order they see fit. And by this point, they should feel capable enough to not feel overwhelmed, and hopefully comfortable enough to experiment. Now, seeing as System Shock 2 is a 25-year-old game, it does show its age in some areas, chiefly the combat. While the shooting is still decent mechanically, it is lacking a sense of punch, exacerbated by the enemy's laggy, awkward damage animations. And the melee is lackluster. It's slow, lacks a sense of impact, and fighting anything below your waist can be awkward and frustrating. Although the laser sword is still badass. Plus, the game can be pretty cheap. Enemies like the assassins have rapid, overwhelming attacks that are hard to defend against, and the game has a nasty habit of spawning enemies directly behind you, which can be outright nonsensical. And let's not forget the research system, where by researching alien body parts you can gain an attack advantage against them. However, you'll have to track down specific chemicals kept in storerooms that can be a pain to backtrack to. This system was streamlined in BioShock in the form of the camera, which was way, way better. But putting those things aside, the experience is still engrossing, and every time I replay it, I find it hard to pull myself away. A big part of that is the excellent pacing, but more so the haunting atmosphere that hooks you right in.
The entire sector is depressurizing and the low vacuum shield won't last long. Get through a secure airlock before you're sucked into space. Move it!
System Shock 2 is a creepy game. Seriously, this is a creepy game. There's dead, dismembered bodies everywhere, apparitions just pop up, not to mention the ghostly sing-song voices whispering about babies needing to sleep.
Babies must sleep.
Babies must rest.
Wise is the one who does not waken them.
Yeah, creepy game. Back when this came out, it was considered one of the scariest games out there, and I can see why. Honestly, I do think it has lost some of its scare factor through the years, especially when compared to the horror titles that came after. But it still can get under your skin, especially with its narrative that is pretty horrific.
God, don't do it! Please don't!
Glory to the many.
I am a voice in their choir.
Just like its predecessor and successors, the story is primarily conveyed through audio logs and visual storytelling, and remains one of the finest examples of both techniques. It effectively paints a picture of the terror that fell upon the Von Braun, and the crew members that fought the infestation tooth and nail, and the ones that fell to its influence. And while I do think the ending leans a little too much on the goofy side, it all comes together in a satisfying and unforgettable way. You'll understand why people want a System Shock 3 so bad. In terms of this remaster, the gameplay stays 100% faithful to the original, with no real quality of life improvements added. At least not obvious ones. I'm not really critical of this though, because putting the learning curve and some aged mechanics aside, System Shock 2 has always played great and still plays great in this new form. That being said, I do wish there were some updates to the UI, which I'll touch on later. And there is one tiny quality of life improvement I wish they included, which is the option to use disposable items like health, size syringes, food, drink, etc. right there during gameplay instead of having to pick them up, go into your inventory, and consume them. To be fair, there are shortcuts for the health and size syringes specifically, but otherwise, this is functionality you see in most modern immersive sims, and I think it would have been a welcome addition here. Last thing for gameplay, seeing as this remaster will be coming to consoles and handhelds, controller support has been added and can be enjoyed with your gamepad of choice. Longtime players of System Shock 2 might understandably feel that controller support would not be the most straightforward thing to add, but Nightdive has done a decent job implementing it. While interacting with the inventory screen is somewhat cumbersome, they've added customizable shortcuts in the form of radial windows that the player can bring up with the shoulder buttons. And I'm happy to say they retain the ability to lean left and right by toggling it on and off with the left stick. Helpful button prompts also appear in game too. In terms of the feel, the aiming does feel good on the sticks, if not a bit on the stiff side, although there are sliders for sensitivity and dead zone, as well as the option for gyro aiming, which I know the Nintendo Switch shooter fans out there swear by. Overall, it works. While not my preferred way to play, console players and those that just prefer controllers should have few issues.
Oh no, what have we done?
A big thing with this remaster is that Nightdive brought back the multiplayer co-op mode, fixing many of its bugs and allowing for up to 4 players per session, which was possible before but extremely unstable. I was going to touch on this mode for this review, as the idea of 4 players running around the Von Braun sounds like the best kind of chaos, but unfortunately some confusion regarding this game's review embargo and some bad scheduling on my part kept this from happening. I do plan on hopping into this mode soon with my buddies though, and depending on our experience, I might follow this up with a video on the multiplayer mode. Now for the real star of the show, the visual remaster work. As expected, Nightdive has done a full graphical overhaul of the game. As far as I can tell, every inch of its visual presentation has been improved. Every model, every texture, every piece of UI, and it's all very faithful to the original. So much so that a longtime player at first glance will say it looks just as they remember it, but when compared, the improvements are clear. Textures have been upscaled and redrawn to be sharper and cleaner. Text and graphics, whether they be printed on walls or displayed on computer screens, are no longer blurry and pixelated. They are sharp, clear, and legible. And animated graphics have more frames of animation, giving them a smoother look. If you look closely, you will spot some new textures, added to bring subtle details. For instance, in this chemical room, you can spot a few off-color puddles, complementing the spilled and broken containers. Also, check out the floor tiles. While they largely look the same, you can now see some dirt and grime on them. And this is a real small thing, but some textures have been slightly adjusted or shifted to be more symmetrical on their wall or more cohesive with their adjoining surfaces. All weapon models have been redone and given new animations. The pistol and shotgun, for example, have new reload and cocking animations, and in the shotgun's case, there are new hand models applied. Firing the pistol, you can now see the slider go back and shell casings being ejected, not to mention the improved muzzle flashes. Also, look at the new model for the Psi amplifier. The cord connected to your wrist bounces while walking. How cool is that? Plus, tiny details that have always been there are now more clearly expressed, like the blood spattered on the head of the wrench, which before were blurry red smears. Not to mention the green LED light on it now actually glows. With the exception of their core animations, enemies, NPCs, and corpses have been redone as well. Their models sport more polygons, giving them a more rounded, realistic look, as opposed to their older, stick-like limbs, hands, and feet. But they still have a somewhat angular polygonal look that harkens to their original 90s models. Their textures are totally redrawn, expressing clear, gory details. Like now, on the hybrids, you can clearly see the parasitic worm burrowing into their chest and head. And if you look closely, you'll catch that the hybrid mouths now animate, along with the ghostly apparitions that occasionally appear.
Not me. No way. They're not gonna get me.
There's also subtle new animations in the environment too. In particular, cyber terminals now have a viewfinder that pops up when using them, a small ad that gives some insight into how these terminals are interfaced with. Through the eyes. Ugh. For the most part, the lighting stays true to the original, but does add improvements to sand down the rougher edges, so to speak. In the original, the baked-in shadows sometimes appeared low-res and blocky, with their edges having a stair-steppy look. Much of that has been smoothed out in the remaster, making the shadows appear softer and more realistic. They are also darker with deeper shades of black, giving a stronger sense of contrast to the environment, and overall the colors appear richer and more saturated. I was a little surprised dynamic lighting and shadows weren't added, but it's hardly a complaint as the lighting is still effective in creating unsettling atmosphere, which is key to this experience. The HUD and other user interfaces have been completely redrawn, and like the textures, are razor sharp, but stay faithful to the original with the exception of a few redrawn icons and some windows being repositioned. It looks good, but I do have some gripes. For one, there's no option to resize the HUD, which would have been nice, as for me it was a hair on the small side, and I would have liked the option to use an alternate text font that was bolder and easier to read. These are things that have been included in other Nightdive remasters. The other thing too is that I really wish they took the step of creating an optional alternate HUD that was more modern, perhaps in line with what they did in the System Shock remake. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Shock 2 UI. It feels too condensed and is not terribly readable. I mean, most of this game's learning curve is just getting used to it. And while the operating system feel might have been cool back in the day, now it feels clunky and awkward. Plus, I think Nightdive missed some opportunities for quality of life improvements, like adding some options and sorting through the audio logs, like by name, instead of having to scroll through lists. And it would have been nice if I could pin important notes and objectives to my screen during gameplay, instead of having to go back in and click through a bunch of menus.
You're recovering from the effects of surgery and will be unable to remember any of the events of the last few weeks.
One thing that blew me away were the cutscenes. Nightdive has completely recreated them, matching them to the new remastered visuals. And to that, thank God, as the main character no longer looks like a low-poly deformed otter, but now a beatnik. Look, they added a reflection on the glass of his cryopod. Ah, it's neat. But Nightdive even went through the trouble of recreating their effects, like the VHS security cam look, which I think was done practically. If not, that's some damn fine effects work. The results, I think, are amazing, and really go to show just how meticulous this team is in their remasters. One odd thing is that the death animation wasn't updated in any way. Dying has you awkwardly flopping to your side with your weapon still at the ready, which is both janky and humorous. It's an odd thing to overlook in light of how meticulous Nightdive was here, and makes me wonder if there was some sort of limitation getting in the way of improving this. Something that really surprised me though, and is a letdown, is that the video settings are pretty bare bones, with the only options being resolution, video driver, FPS, ambient occlusion, and bloom. Many of the customizable options commonly seen in Nightdive titles are absent, like being able to tweak your crosshair and once again adjust the HUD. There's not even the option to change the FOV, which is shocking, honestly. You also aren't able to tweak or turn off the game's enhancements in favor of the original graphics, at least not easily. If you want to turn all the enhancements off, you have to do it in the mods menu at the start of a new game, and only at the start of a new game. And these don't apply to the cinematics either. It makes me wonder if there was some sort of technical limitation that kept them from implementing this stuff in their usual way. Disappointing, but admittedly not the biggest deal in the world. And the fact that the original graphics are still accessible is good, as I tend to see Nightdive's efforts as not just remasters, but archives to preserve these games. It's also worth mentioning that the original System Shock 2 is still available to purchase and still works beautifully on modern machines, in case there are the hardest of hardcore purists out there. And although, while there are a few negatives, the remaster artistry here is some of Nightdive's finest. I just love how they balance making their games look better while still making them feel faithful to the original. Where other remaster studios opt to improve their titles to look a few generations ahead, Nightdive strives to make theirs look of their era. It might be more fair to consider this not so much a remaster, but an artistic restoration. A competent one at that. None of this going on. Jesus. While the improvements are clear, it looks as you remember it, which to me is the sweet spot of remasters. Hopefully in the future though, we get some updates to add some more video and accessibility options. System Shock 2 Remaster is a solid sprucing up of the legendary classic. While lacking in video options and some quality of life improvements, it makes up for it with a faithful graphical remaster full of great new details. And of course, System Shock 2 itself, while showing its age, is still an incredible, engrossing, and creepy game that will keep you coming back for more. Fans of the original version should definitely check this out, and those who have only experienced the recent remake, the BioShock games, or are fascinated by the immersive sim genre, should give it a shot as well. But that's it for me. What are your thoughts on System Shock 2? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.